Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rise and Grind in the Morning. I'm 72 the Architect, aka Jason B. And today we're going to be producing live on Breakout as well as YouTube. So we're going to get started for today. We'll be right back in just a second. All right, everybody. So it is, May 19th, 2023. And we're going to talk about practice is the learning. That's right. Practice is the learning. Now, from the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus, in his discourse, he says that that's why philosophers warn us not to be satisfied with mere learning, but to add practice and then the training. As for time passes, we forget what we learned and end up doing the opposite and hold opinions to the opposite of what we should. So, what does that really mean to a lot of us? Honestly, it means a lot to me. Is there anything that you ever really wanted to do? You got inspired. Let's take an example, something as simple as, you see your favorite guitarist from your rock band, and your parents buy you a guitar, and you're like, wow, it seems like it's simple enough. Just press this thing and hold this down and strum or pick or whatever, and you're like, wow, it takes work. But did anyone possibly tell you it's going to take a lot of practice just to get into that rhythm alone? I think that's something to say a lot about ourselves, right? I think that is something that we really ought to take note of. It's like, how do we actually make things work? And it does take a lot of practice. That's right, practice. So no matter what you do, whether it's playing a guitar or learning how to be a professional speaker, what have you, it's going to take work, and you just have to be able to be good with that. And that's definitely something that I would say. So, but Ryan happens to go on and explain this quote just a little bit more. He adds a little depth to it. And what he basically says, according to his Daily Stoic on page 153, he says, very few people can simply watch instructional videos or hear something explained, then know backward and forward how to do it. Most of us actually have to do something several times in order to truly learn. One of the hallmarks of the martial arts, military training, and athletic training of most of any kind is the hours upon hours and upon hours of monotonous practice. As an athlete in the highest level will train for years to perform movements that can last very mere seconds or less. The 2-minute drill, how to escape from a chokehold, the perfect jumper, simply knowing isn't enough. It must be absorbed into the muscles and the body. It must become part of us, or we risk losing second that experience stressful or difficulty. I think that's very important, to say the least. And when I look at what's actually taking place, it says a lot. It really does. It says, do I want that? Do I really want that? I am live. There we go. Anyways, sorry, I had to make some adjustments. This is also my first official day launch on Rise and Grind. And that's the beautiful thing, is that we're trying new platforms. I've been recruited to come over here. Initially, when I first tried it, Breakout, the social audio experience, it just wasn't there for me, but they've made lots of improvements. So Friday mornings at about 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, I will be coming on live, and I will be sharing my material and so on and so forth. So we're definitely going to be making some moves, definitely going to be shifting some experiences. But to get back to the actual experience of what's taking place, how much does it take practice to be a podcaster? Do we even understand? Let's use that, something that many of you out there want to create content. I think for me, I realize for me, excuse me, not just I think, I realize for me that there are a lot of things on the ground that you got to get right off the bat. And what does that actually mean? Well, I'm glad you asked, but it takes one, the idea, the motive, and the inspiration to do something, right? It's to do something grander, to make life work. And with that being said, you've got to understand for everything to work, it takes like kind of like what Ryan was saying in his daily Stoic, the practice, the amount of hours of doing the same thing over and over. And I remember seeing this phrase that I've talked about on Rise and Grind before. Is there was a post on Instagram where a guy basically said, "Hey, I practice to where I can't get it wrong. Professionals practice to where they can't get it wrong. And those trying to become professional practice just to get it right." So, what does that mean to us? And that actually poses the question, where am I doing the opposite of what I should? So, it kind of points at you may be practicing on unanswered, excuse me, unanswered tasks. It may teach you like, hey, you know what? In order for me to be a great speaker, how much time do I spend on the microphone hearing my own voice? How many times do I spend time actually learning about what the craft means? How to interview a guest, how to be received as a guest. There's all these little things, and understanding your equipment. I mean, there's been so many experiences where um even myself, I would get hung up on um what do you call it? Uh just getting hung up on technology and thinking, well, if I have the great tech, you know, I should be good. But did anyone tell you how much time it takes to learn the technology, learn how this microphone works, learn how the camera works, look at how the lighting works? It's not by accident. It's really about putting the work in the right places. So when I look at what has taken place and what kind of work am I doing in the right places? Sometimes you got to work in, I call it no man's land. You figure out, well, this isn't me. I'm not growing. Like if I'm on an app like such as Breakout and I've been recruited and I can't do certain features to record, you know, what does that say? And it can be frustrating, but there's times where you just got to see beyond just the obstacle, and practice will help you get through no man's land. It'll be like, well, it's just something about the chemistry of what happens in life in the mode of doing. Even if you're doing it wrong, you're like, well, hey, I'm obviously facing that's the wrong thing. I'm facing things that don't really matter, right? So when I actually look at what has taken place, when I look at, what's important to me, you know, I have to look at the practice. I look at what matters. And and that's tough because no one wants to look like a fool. No one wants to seem like an amateur. You know what I mean? You really have to just say, okay, whatever it costs, I'm gonna permit myself to actually do, you know? And there's a lot of people who have done things where it's just like, I just couldn't get past the first 5 steps. And I get so frustrated. And I keep practicing, practicing, and I'm doing the same thing. And sometimes you have to just like take it back, a step back, realize what's important, what matters. Maybe you're not giving yourself enough patience. So, but I do want to point out another paragraph that Ryan happens to state. And he basically says, it is true that philosopher principles as well. You can't just hear something once and expect to rely on it and the world crashing down around us. Remember, Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing his meditations for people or other people. He was actively meditating for himself. And even as a successful, wise, and experienced man, he was, until his last days of his life, practicing and training himself to do the right thing. How many times can we say even that? Are you practicing yourself for yourself? Are you taking time to realize your emotions are really yours alone and nobody else's. No one owns this to you. You do. You choose about how those things are going to facilitate. For example, I was getting my morning started and I got a little frustrated with, a thing this morning, and someone decided to object or interject, and it just threw me off. And so I had to decide, okay, either take myself out of the environment and get me right back to center focus, get me back to the center spot to do me the best way I can. I let it go essentially and bring myself right back to collective, right back to the focus point, right to where it matters. See, and nowadays we notice that so many people are kind of like on a video game um momentum, like start, stop, restart. Hey, I failed, start over, and never learn really what's going wrong for them. It's like, hey, let me reset, constantly reset, do over. But all that's doing is to teach you how to reset and not teaching you how to go forward. So in the Daily Stoic, in the last few days, I've talked about habits. Habits are created by practice. Practice makes everything work for the benefit of you, right? You want to be a speaker, a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. You want to be the best of your best. You're going to have to train in obstacles. You're going to have to really get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what does it do for you? So I think it's a very big important point. And when the Stoics talk about, you know, temperance, like the four virtues of a Stoic is, courage, discipline, temperance, and wisdom. You don't get wisdom without putting some intelligence and memory. So they talk about muscle memory, right? So you look at that and you say, well, okay, great. I've got that experience now. I know what doesn't work. What about the discipline? When everyone's telling you no, oh man, you're not that good. But if I would have listened, in my own example, if I would have listened to people, 6 years ago when I first started getting started on content creation and podcasting, if I would have listened to my mom, my brother, my girlfriend, oh, that's just a nice wish. Here it is 6 years later, they come and listen to me, and then they're like, you're a completely different person. You know how to pace it out. You learned, right? So, and if I would have listened to the discouragement, where would I be? Sometimes you just have to say, screw it. I don't care. I'm just going to do this. And then it takes the courage. The courage is very, very important in all of this. The courage to not just defy what you see and hear from the outside world, but what you tell yourself internally. Like, think about this really carefully. How many times did you talk yourself out of doing based on your assumptions? You're scared. You don't know how to do it. See, when I was a kid, I was like, hey, go for it, man. What do you got to risk? Not having? I mean, I was a poor kid who didn't like. I remember used to riding BMX bikes with my friends. Who remembers that? Like, you get on bikes, you're riding on dirt jumps, and you fall down. Sometimes I broke my arm, but you know what? Eventually, you scrape yourself, dust yourself off, get right back on, and you do it, and you see you're not screwing up anymore. Now you're doing it like it's nothing. So the point of today really is to think about, where do you realize the gems are in the practice? Where do you realize um, that the benefit is the practice? The gems are the practice, because without that calcification of what you do and whatever mistakes you made and accomplishments you made, it's like playing the guitar. Your fingers, every guitarist will tell you, you need to callus up your fingers so that you can get used to playing. And pressing on those metal strings ain't fun. It's painful at times, but eventually you stop feeling and you're just getting into the muscle memory and you're doing it. So this is a time where I do have a few members in my audience over on Breakout. So good morning, Jenny, and good morning, Michael. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for coming by. If there's any comments that you guys would like to add, what is the gem in your practice of what you do? How do you really benefit? So if any of you guys care to come on up. You're more than welcome to add some context. But if not, no problem. We'll be bringing our show to a close in a few minutes here. But if for those listeners, I have not been able to record live. I've tried the functions on Breakout. There is some difficulty. I've tried pressing the three dots, trying to adjust things. I've tried recommendations, but it's just not. So that's why I come on YouTube to back up my audio. So that's other thing experience. All right. So since no one's coming up or raising their hand, thank you so much. We're going to end the show and we're going to have our day. So go forward this weekend. Think about what you practice in. Come back and visit me Monday morning. I will be producing live on YouTube again with the Rise and Grind, and we'll get going. I may be also making material over the weekend. So hopefully you all have enjoyed your experience. And if you're brand new to Breakout, it's launch weekend. Breakout, the app, is actually going to be posting their distribution, their layout, their relaunch, so to speak, over this weekend at a thing called VidCon, which is kind of great. I think personally, it's just an experience to show people, hey, a brand new platform that people can enjoy. So anyhow, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all have a great day.